Welcome back, everyone. In an effort to expedite matters and got a lot of the information presented by Mr. Wickham, also he covered a lot of the information that would have been presented by Mr. Brand. We're going to move into our next presenter, which is Ms. Melissa Romero, who is the Manager of Taxpayer Services from GRA, and she's been at GRA for 9+ years with social sciences degrees as well as accounting certificates. So, Ms. Romero.
Pleasant good morning or good day to honorable ministers, members of the Tender Board Committee. There's no other member on the panel I can see anybody else here. Anyway, good day to you and good day to you all contractors, suppliers, and special invitees. My task today is to give you a little insight on the tender compliance and the process involved. However, before I get into that, I will tell you what is a compliance. A compliance is a certificate that is issued to taxpayers once they have submitted all the required documents and all outstanding taxes, where applicable, have been paid. We usually issue or process 3 types of compliances within the Ghana Revenue Authority. We process compliance for land, motor vehicle, and tender. The land and the motor vehicle compliances are issued in cases where you need to dispose of your property or your vehicle. The tender compliance is a certificate that is issued to taxpayers who are tendering for government contracts. And the purpose of this compliance is to ensure that taxpayers is in compliance with the laws and regulations. In order for one to obtain such a compliance, all you need to do is to fill an application form which you can obtain from the GRA website, attach a copy of your ID. If it's an individual or a business, you attach your business registration or your company's regulations. Whenever one applying for this compliance, you also need to submit all your required returns. You also need to submit your business registration if you are into a business field. And this is one of the things that most persons who apply for the tender compliance are in the business. They fail to attach a copy of this business registration to their application form. Now, the GRA issue the tender compliance to these persons. And if you require, as Mr. Wickham outlined, that if you have a business, you must ensure that your business registration is up to date for the tender board process as well as for GRA compliance process. If you're requiring that your business name is being inputted on your compliance, you must submit an updated business registration. You can submit that along with the application, or you can submit that during the processing of your compliance. We usually write on the business name on your compliance as long as you provide us with that updated copy of the compliance. In looking at the tender compliance as well, you also look at the submission of your returns. Taxpayers are oftentimes applying for the compliance today and submit the last 8 years returns today, and they expect the GRA sometimes to process their compliance in a timely manner. That cannot always be done because the processing of the returns takes time, and the processing of the compliance also takes time. So we wish to advise that you're now into this business for those newcomers. You're now starting to procure businesses. So we're advising you that year after year, come the 30th of April, you try to continue submitting your returns in a timely manner, because this will affect the timely processing of your compliance whenever you do apply. So please ensure that you submit your income tax returns, your property tax returns where applicable. For those persons who have employees, you need to submit your Form 2s and your Form 5 when at the end of on the 14th of every month and the end of the year, you need to ensure that you submit these returns. For those persons who do not have employees and you subcontract your job, you can submit a list of those subcontractors to the Guyana Revenue Authority. Submit their TIN, their name, their address, and probably the nature of their job. But you need to ensure that you submit these information prior to the processing of your compliance, because you can't expect to submit at the same time and expect to get your compliance in a timely manner. And this will cause some of you to reach at the tender board at 9:05 or 9:20, because sometimes your returns only processed the day before, and then you got to come and pay your taxes and those kind of things. So the process may, for most of the self-employed persons, ensure that you submit your returns in a timely manner. For those persons who would have advanced taxes to pay, for those persons who would have VAT returns to submit, PAYE, Form 5, submit them in a timely manner. Ensure that every year, or I think now is every birthday, which is the date that the registration took effect, you get your registration renewed prior to applying for your compliance or during that process, so you can submit it and get your compliance in a timely manner. For those persons who, well, the GRA doesn't only cater for garnering revenue from you, but we try to provide a service which will have you to be compliant. We should provide the service so that you will be voluntary compliant, I should say. We won't have to hurry to go after you to get you to comply, but you will comply voluntarily. In so doing, I must say that for persons who might submit the returns and they might have a lot of taxes outstanding and so on, we have provisions in place where you can come into us and let us know what is your position, and we try to reach you at some point in order to get you to pay the taxes in a piecemeal basis. So not because you have the taxes outstanding means that you might not be able to get your compliance, but we come to a decision, come to an agreement and say, okay, you'll pay it every month or you pay it however we agree, and you can still be able to get your compliance. Mind you, we will keep up to date as to whether your payments are up to date by the time you come to get the other compliance. So we do try to meet persons in providing those type of services. In addition to that, I must say that we have also commenced July. We have changed the dates in the expiration of the tender to allow you to be a little more voluntary compliance also. So we have extended the date from every 3 months, which is every quarter, to every half year. So if you get your compliance now during this period, it will valid until the 31st of December of this year, and the other half year would commence in January. So we have been trying to get you to be more compliant, ease the burden on you to be coming there every 3 months to get your compliance. So we have been trying there to ease the burden on you a little. And as the minister rightfully said, that we have had a tremendous increase in the number of tenders that is being allotted since sometime during last year. Because from doing the amount of compliances from then to now, we have realized there have been a tremendous increase in the number of tender certificates that we issued. So I must compliment those organizers, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Procurement, for easing whatever they would have done to allow the contractors to be able to come in and start new ventures and get into these projects. Finally, I would just like to encourage you to, again, file your returns in a timely manner in order for us to process your compliance in a timely manner, because that is one of the main reasons that delays persons when they apply for the tender compliance. That is one of the main reasons, whether it's VAT returns, PAY returns, self-employed returns, company returns, is one of the main reasons that affects the processing of your compliance. Ensure you file your returns, pay your taxes, whether it be advance taxes, whatever taxes, ensure you pay the taxes, and we have provisions in place where we lean on you in order for you to pay your taxes, and for some of the companies in filing their returns. So ensure that you file your returns in a timely manner, and you will be able to get the service in a timely and efficient manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Romero. And again, remember, GRA's booth is downstairs if there are any more questions. And after the set of presentations for the morning session, we will have a question and answering component. So if any of you have your questions, you can hold them to that point. Our next presenter is Mr. William Boston from NIS. He's the Assistant Operations Manager with Masters in Business Administration, as well as an Advanced Diploma in Project Management.
Honorable Ministers, Minister Patterson, Minister Fortson, Minister Sharma, all the colleagues, morning. No, NNS is usually a very contentious area, but I'm happy for these opportunities because even in our own internal workings, we are more or less continually pushing for more forums of this nature, and even to take some initiatives on our own to ensure we spread, because it's clear that there are some misconceptions, some misunderstandings about NIS. We need to clear them, because even before the presentation, I want to start by saying NIS is a very good thing that you should embrace. Of course. Now, there are a lot of myths and there are truths, but let's just look at a few very quickly. Many persons out there would feel that contributing to the NIS is to be avoided. You could dodge it if you can, but I want to say no. It's obligatory and should be embraced. NIS contributions is burdensome. That's what some people feel. It's a burdensome commitment, and that all we do is collect money. And again, I say no. It's beneficial. It is a provision for health issues and even death, which can occur and lead to loss of earnings. NIS will supplement this loss, and later in life, a pension is assured. Some people say NIS is inflexible, and again, I say no. NIS is a social service organization with a motto of help us to help you. So come, let's talk, don't shy. Now, the fact of the matter as it relates to national insurance, and this is just an overview, but as you've been told, there's a booth. We'll be available even during the lunchtime to talk to you even before the questions and answer if you need further clarity hereof. But under the National Insurance Social Security Act, Chapter 3601, it's a law of Guyana, all employers and their employees must register and contribute to the National Insurance Scheme. This law also encompasses persons deemed to be self-employed. Now, employees to be registered. And I particularly placed in bracket, ensure this is done before work. Because one of the contentions that usually occur is that the persons, when you approach NIS eventually for compliance, and we ask about employees, is that the persons work, they're gone, you can't find them, they didn't have a birth certificate, they couldn't register them. So I want to alert you that the prerequisite of registering an employee, do it before they actually start to work. It may sound ridiculous, but as it relates to registration for employees, anyone earning more than $5 per week should be registered with NIS as a paying contributor. And $5 there, though the law is a bit old, is a good thing to be there because nobody works for less than $5 in this day. And it comes to the point of one of the other contentious areas that we are at times, you say, but the person only worked for a day. But it's not how long they work, it's what they've worked for that determines the process of paying contributions to NIS. Right? Any other, and under any term of contract of service or apprenticeship, any employee categorized as that, and we're going to come later to some contentious area. That contract of service is particularly there when we're going to go to subcontract. Apprentices should also be registered with NIS, okay? Professionals who work on a full-time basis. Casual, seasonal, temporary work employees, people who just work for a period, of course, linking it with the $5. We're back there, whether they work for a day, a couple hours, whatever. Persons working for commission, non-national so local employers or foreign employer with a branch in Guyana. Employers on contract or work permit. Sometimes some companies are big enough to bring in persons from another country and they have to get work permits and so forth. Once they're in that category, they're also linked to the necessity of paying a contribution to NIS. And for those I haven't captured, I've just placed them in the bracket of other gainfully employed, not mentioned. Now there are some employees not to be registered. A married woman working for her husband should not be registered as an employee. She's a self-employed person. A non-citizen and person employed by international organization who is exempted from from Social Security. Some persons on the conventions like the Geneva Conventions and so forth are not required to pay NIS or and GRS, and so they're not necessarily, there's no need to register them. Now, self-employed needs to be registered, and a self-employed is anyone gainfully occupied in legal activities, and they're not deemed as employed. Note, where the employer is a company, every employee must be registered, inclusive of the major shareholders, and wife of, if there's a wife of one of the shareholders who may be employed. So remember, by definition, a company is an entity separate from owners. So in that regard, the persons involved in a company all fall into the jurisdiction of employees. Now, the process of registration, and again, this is just an overview. What I said, we are available for more details, right? Okay. Application, but this is what I want you to know. Once you apply for a registration, the application must be verified by a visit by an NIS inspector. We know the work, right? Some people become phantoms. They come, they give you address. When you turn up, they're never there. They just use an address. So we've got to verify it, right? The inspector would need to identify the business and the records. That's basically why that visit is paid. Now, if satisfactory, the application is processed. You'll receive an NIS certificate of registration, and that registration would have the certificate details, right? Okay, such as an employer registration number that you'll use as a reference when dealing with NIS, right? We'll know about your employees, we'll know about, and if there's a category, sometimes you're a business owner, but within that structure you're also self-employed, right? All of these issues will be checked out. Note, employees or self-employed persons previously registered need not register. You might have worked somewhere before, okay? If you change employment, that record remains. We'll just do the change as it relates to where you are now employed. Same stuff with the self-employed, right? If you were registered as a self-employed, we have it. The big story, the contributions. Now, contributions are payment made by and on behalf of workers or self-employed or self to cover a specific period of time. Contributions are paid based upon insurable earnings. Currently in Guyana, the insurable earnings ceiling is $200,000, right? And $170,000 for the self-employed person. Monthly. Basically what it means is that NIS is not interested if you're earning more than those ceilings. That is what you pay. We are that gratuitous, right? Whether you're making millions, we cater for you paying up to a ceiling of $200,000. Now, contributions must be paid by the 15th of every month in respect of the previous month. So we are now in July. July 15 would have been the allotted time by which you should have paid for June. Right? In July, you have until August 15 to pay for July. Once you don't do that, an interest will be charged for lateness. Self-employed persons are a bit more fortunate even than the employees. A self-employed person, once properly assessed, can pay up in advance for an entire year. And there are other points to note. Age requirement for the payment of NIS at the full contribution rate is age 16 to 60. For persons over age 60, employers are required to pay 1.5% for them. They don't have to pay anything, but for the self-employed, they will have to pay. No payments required for unpaid apprentices and work-study students, but they must be registered. You don't pay for your apprentices if they're not being paid, or the work-study students, but they must be registered. Proper records of payment must be kept and presented on request of inspectors. The inspectors have an obligatory duty as part of their execution of function to ensure what you represent to us could be proven by your records. So please ensure, particularly as new entrants, that you keep proper records pertaining to your wages and salary payments. Right? And one such record, as I alluded to, in terms of wages and salary, is the schedule, which must always be prepared in triplicate and which must be used to make contribution payments, preferably electronically. We're moving to the stage where we want to stop killing all of the trees, so a lot of our processes, we're gradually moving to the electronic platform. And those we could amplify on when we get out there. Now there's some responsibilities, and I really want you to hang in here to execute, right? To remove some of the bottlenecks that you would usually complain that you suffer with when you engage NIS. Let's look at these responsibilities. Now, change of category from employed to self-employed or termination of employment. If you are a self-employed person, if you are an employed person and you're now going on your own, you have an obligation to inform NIS because we have to put you in a different category. If you don't do it, but then you turn up with the compliance and we find this is a scenario, then time has to be taken to do this. If you change your address, you need to inform NIS. If you cease your operation, you need to inform NIS. Failure to adhere to the above aforementioned will cause you to be deemed, in some cases, non-compliant, and then could then affect the whole issuance of a compliance. A lot of persons run away with the apprehension that once you pay NIS, you're compliant. But pay is the prime thing, but there are some other criteria, as you're seeing now, that you must meet. Okay? A compliance certificate shall be awarded to an employer or a self-employed person on the following basis. For the employer must be registered with NIS. Registering your business at the deeds registry is not the end-all. You have to bring that registration when it's issued to NIS so that we could categorize you and put you into our database. The employer must be paying NIS contributions at the correct rate for all employees on the business register. A lot of people, we pay NIS. When the inspector goes, they pay for 8, staff 20. You have a problem. Contribution, and then you're on the page, some of you put 60 and you're paying the man 80. When he becomes ill and so forth, he's going to have a problem with you. And we're going to find out that you're on the paying him. We're going to have to stop, investigate, get those things corrected, and there are penalties too. Huh? Good. Contribution payments in respect of employers and all employees must be up to date. This is a sickening point. You need to pay that contribution on time. Because a lot of persons, and like I said, we're going to continue the edification process, a lot of persons do not realize, and I want to tell you now, that actual benefits are tied to timely contribution payments. So a lot of issues arise because you may turn up, someone, an employee sick, they come for benefit, next thing there are no contributions recorded over them, you have taken out the money, yes, and that's criminal by the way, right? You could get into trouble for that. The employer must ensure that all employees are registered with NIS and possess permanent social security numbers. Everyone should have one of those yellow cards. The employer must be keeping and maintaining personal records of employees and an employment and accident register on premises of employment. The employer must be keeping and maintaining an approved wage or earnings record in accordance with the provision of the regulations. Note, where the successor of a defaulting company carrying the same name of the defaulter applies for a compliance certificate and has within its employer former director of the said company, such individuals will not be issued the compliance unless the outstanding contribution payments are brought up to date or settled. The official transfer of liabilities is taken into consideration. So a lot of people come and say, well, it wasn't me then. But if it's the same business, the liability is extended. Where an employer who had previously ceased operation had fulfilled the obligation under the National Insurance Act in respect of all employees, applies for a compliance certificate in order to secure employment. The issuance of such certificate would be granted provided that the employer had reported the temporary cessation of operations within a month of termination. As we said earlier, there are some obligations. You should be informing NIS. Failing which, you'll have to wait the time for us to do a proper investigation. The self-employed primarily is the same thing, and in the essence of time, I'm just going to skip it, but it's basically the same thing, but the difference here is that you're dealing with you as a person. Okay? And of course, as opposed to the employer, remember, you have the opportunity currently to pay 1 year in advance. Next one. Now this is it. Failure to comply with the requirements, again, will result in the employer, self-employed, not being issued with certificate compliance. We usually issue a disapproval letter highlighting reasons, right, why you were denied the compliance. So once you apply and we deny, there's information to tell you what we have spotted, and you should react to that. Now there are legal implications of non-compliance based upon the various issues that could lead to you not being issued a compliance. You could find yourself in front of the court for one or a combination of the following charges. Failure to register as a self-employed. When the inspector comes, failures to produce your registration card as a self-employed, you should have that card. Failure to register as an employer, if you're an employee, you should be registered. Failure to submit a complete list of every person you're employed could get you in trouble. Failure to register a person you're employed, you're paying for some, not paying for some, could get you in trouble. Failure to keep and maintain a wage register. Failure to keep records for the prescribed period could get you into records. Knowingly making a false statement could get you into records. Knowingly producing a document which is false. You know, some persons forge these compliances, and the tender boards and ourselves are working on modalities to even be more penal on this. For now, once NIS spotted, it's a police matter. Alright? Once we spot a forged certificate, it's a police matter. But we're trying to work collaboratively with the tender board to make it more penal, like banning you for some amount of time or so forth from the process, things like that. So this is also criminal. You deduct the portion of your contribution from an employee. There's an obligation if you're an employer, you have to pay a part, and the employee has to pay a part. You can't take the whole thing out of the employees. Now, you should not delay inspectors when they come to visit. They do have some powers. They're usually given a fiat, which gives them some power, right? And you should not refuse to answer questions. And the one everyone knows is failing to pay contribution. But I put that last because all that preceded that are also issues that could lead to disapproval or not being issued with a compliance. Contentious areas, period of inactivity. You know, sometimes this is one of the major challenges of NIS. A contractor walks in and says, well, I haven't worked for 3 years, so I'm paying contribution for 3 years. The issue is that in a lot of times there is a misconception that only if you get a government contract you should pay NIS. No, once you're working you pay NIS. Okay? Registered as an employer, some people want an employer registration compliance, but they have no employees. There's a clear definition of what constitutes an employer. You've got to be active employing people. Some persons want their trade names to be included, fine, but it means that you'd have to show the proof from the deeds registry for us to do that you're trading in that name. Right? There are also issues where people submitted, you ask what's the reason for the compliance? Tender public works. Not good enough. That information tells us something about you. As you heard, Minister Sharman spoke about a self-employed compliance as against employed. That's one of the contentious areas that even we are grappling with. Because sometimes there are slippages, right? You see in the papers, a man get a $200 something million contract. Send down to the tender board for copy the compliance issue, self-employed. Almost impossible, regardless how much machinery he has. Those things tell us things, so we need the details. Application and timeliness of payment of contributions. Remember, you must pay by the stipulated date. It's law. Alright? Non-payment impact. Okay, I spoke to you about the affected benefits, and it would affect you as it relates to the issuance of a compliance if you're not up to date when you apply. Also, NIS is moving to a platform where a lot of these things are going to be electronic. So it's a basic check and balance. So you only interface with the human being. So if you haven't done the thing, you're not up to date, you haven't met the criteria, the system will reject it. Right? A very contentious area is employee versus independent contractors, but I will take that outside because that could take whole day. The easy thing for a lot of contractors to say is that we subcontract, so we ain't looking after NIS to that man. But I want to say this. The laws of NIS says that the board of directors of NIS are the only authority, not even the Ministry of Labor, are the only authority in this country to determine if you're self-employed or employed. So you can't determine that. We have to determine that for you. There's a test, right? For a person to be self-employed, he has a certain amount of latitude. I won't go into it in detail. But for example, could the man come to work when he wants? Does he have his own tools? If he worked today and he worked 2 days after, is he penal? If those things are on a yes or no scale is not balanced out, more than likely the person is an employee. That much I say at this forum, but on the outside. Timeliness of the issuance of compliance, this is also usually a contentious area, but I want to say this. Some persons come in today and they say, well, I said compliance 3 days after, right? 3 days after. That's what NIS is. But we check the compliance, everything is not correct. You're not going to get it in 3 days. In addition to that, remember that the compliance is serviced by inspectors who are in the fields also. So you can't bring it Friday afternoon and expect it Monday morning, that's 3 days out. As a matter of fact, it's 3 working days. But even on a work week, it would be unfair to bring it an afternoon at 3:30 and come that as a day. Some stuff like that. Alright? So basically, in a nutshell, this is the awareness of NIS. This is where you need to be with it. These are the things you need to be aware of. Our offices are always open. I myself has an open door policy. The inspectorate and all compliance divisions in this country are encouraged to have an open door policy. The main focus has always been to help you. Okay, we are not tyrants when you come to NIS. Even if you're defaulting, you don't end up in the lockups. We are willing to work with you. Embrace NIS, we're going to bring you through. There are modalities that we could use, even if you're in deficit, to get there. Take the opportunity now. We are moving steadfastly to the point of getting issues of compliance being monitored by more control mechanisms, like how GRA has the TIN, so it will be hard to escape. And if we catch you at the wrong point, it could be detrimental because you'll have a whole set of money to pay from wherever. So work on those things. Good. As it relates to percentages, 8.4% is the employer's responsibility, okay, and 5.6% comes from the employee's salary, okay, right? For the self-employed, 1% less, so it's 12.5%, right? All total, 12.5%, okay? All right, and that's up to 200,000. Okay? Right. All right. Thank you very much. I know NIS could take whole day, and we are here whole day, but let's reach on the outside. Thanks again.
Thank you, Mr. Austin. So please ensure that you speak at length with Mr. Austin to understand exactly what it is you need to get your compliances, because you can't submit something in your tender documents that is fraudulent or incorrect, because then when you're not awarded, you can't be upset with the ministry or the minister or the evaluators because you were the one that was in the wrong in your submissions. Our next presenter, which will deal with insurance bonds, is Mr. Yogendra Arjun. He is the head of the Insurance Association of Guyana and is also a qualified accountant. Mr. Arjun.
Honorable Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, good day to all. My task today is briefly to explain bonds that are needed when tendering or entering a contract, especially with government agencies. I'll be very brief as we know lunch is coming and we all get a little excited. Firstly, bid bond, or we may call bid security. This is the amount required by a procurement entity from a bidder that may be participating in bidding process for goods, works, or non-consulting services as a security against the bidder withdrawing their bid prior to the expiration of the bid validity period or refusing to sign the contract. This amount may be determined by the procuring entity as a fixed amount of money or a percentage of the bidder's bid price, and this is usually stated in the bid document or in the public procurement rules, such as the Guyana Procurement Act of 2003. The bonds is a standard format and has a definitive timeline, and it's for a specific period, usually 90 or 120 days, commencing from the date the bid opens. Bid bonds also guarantee that the winning bidder will provide the other security required under the contract, such as performance bonds and insurances within a specified time before the contract is entered into or become effective. Once the bidder would have fulfilled these commitments, the obligation for the surety is at the end. Failure by the bidder to meet these commitments, the procuring entity may call upon the surety to pay the bid amount. That's the first one. The second one, performance bonds. A performance bond is generally a promise that the contract entered into by the bonded contractor and the procuring entity will be completed. This bond is required for all goods and works contract and is usually a minimum of 10% of the contract price. This bond is required in most cases to be provided by the contractor or supplier before the final contract is entered into. This is in retrospect serves as a protection for the procurement entity against default by contractor or suppliers. Most contracts specify the conditions under which a contractor or supplier may default. These conditions of default is determined simply the contractor supplier failing to meet the requirement or by evidence that the contractor supplier will unable to meet any future obligations under the contract. Thirdly, advance payment bond, or we call it mobilization bond. An advance payment bond guarantee is a form of protection that makes it possible for the procurement entity to recover any advances payment to the contractor supplier in the event that the contractor supplier fails to meet the terms and conditions that governs the contract. A guarantee of this type may be used for a startup of the contract or to offset any initial expenses of the contractor supplier for mobilization. The advance payment guarantee ensures the procurement entity does not sustain a loss of any money invested in the transaction. This type of bond usually obtained from a bank or an insurance company, depending on the preference of the procurement entity. Bonds of this nature usually contains a reduction clause, whereby the amount of the bond is reduced based on the amount deducted from each monthly payment certificate until the value of the works exceeds the advance payment or reaches a specified limit. So those are the three main bonds that may be needed when you're entering a contract. Now, from the insurance company point of view, to provide such insurances or bonds, they normally need to know a little more of the contractor. For new contractors, it's a bit different. For existing contractors, it's also a little different. As we know, the rules can change. But mainly, we would like to know maybe a recommendation from past employers who you've worked with. How did you do? Did you do a good job, or what have happened? We also want to see the registration of the company, so we have a pretty good idea who the directors are. We also want a copy of the most recent financial, as we would like to know the contract you're entering. You're financially sound to complete that project. We also try to have track records of previous works done, at least 5 years ago. So you've seen works that you have done, how effective you were, and of course the quantum of those projects. We also ask currently what jobs that you're working on, as we try to make sure that contractors don't take on more than they can handle. By doing that, then you put the performance bond under significant pressure. For new contractors, it will vary, as you will not have a track record. But what we try for new contractors is to make sure that they have the ability or they have a qualified engineer who may help them in terms of executing their project. So it differs, but the insurance companies are here to help out as much as they can with these bonds and insurances. But like the banks do, we need to know who we are dealing with and make sure they have the ability to do these kind of work. Also, for some insurance companies, depending on the size of the bond or depends on the risk we are taking with a specific contractor, we may ask for collateral. Collateral can be in form of a bill of sale that you lodge your equipment or motor vehicle or maybe property to some extent. That may be asked by some insurance company, and again, it's mainly based on the amount of insurances, bonds that you need, or of course, if we think it's a risky contractor, we may take collateral to make ourselves feel more comfortable. So those are some of the things that the insurance company may ask you from time to time, every time you came in. If you have a record with the insurance company and you're doing insurance all the time and you keep updating them of your existing projects, then I think you're much easier in terms of getting bonds insurance. So ladies and gentlemen, that's it in a very summarized format. Myself and two colleagues, managers from NAFICO and Diamond are here also. We will be available during the break to answer additional questions or to help out as much we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arjun. And I impose on you to take the opportunity to meet with Mr. Arjun and the associates from the insurance companies to find out exactly what it is that is required of you to get your performance or your insurance bonds. We will now have a questions and answer session. I'm sure there are a lot of questions. And hopefully we equally will have a lot of answers for you. We have representatives here from the ministry that can assist in any questions. But like the minister said, let's give the new entrants, the new contractors, an opportunity to have their questions and their statements be heard.
Greetings to all. My name is Dennis Jones, and I'm seeking to enter the construction field. My question is directed to Mr. Boston from NIS. Now, GRA said, mentioned the time for the expiration time for their compliance, but Mr. Boston did not. So can you please tell us?
1 month.
My name is Mani Sugdeo. I'm not representing a contractor or a company, but I'm here on behalf of my region number 3. My question is to GRE. You guys said that in terms of compliance, you guys have to pay tax. My question is, if it's a new company that is being established, in order for that company to get its compliance, would they also still have to pay tax even though it is a brand new company?
No to that. If it's a new company, the company wouldn't be required to pay tax. It all depends on the date of the registration. We will look at the date the company was registered. Let's say the company registered sometime December last year and now coming to apply for attend the compliance, we would ask them from December to now, are there any activities? Depending on what the response is, we will ask them for other details and information. But if it's a new company, no, they would not be required to pay tax. But sometimes we have persons that might come in, it might not be a new, it might be a new company, but they might have another subsidiary. So sometimes we also look at that, but if it's a new company in its own identity at this point, no, they wouldn't be required to pay tax.
My name is Mark Henry, representing Henry's Contracting and Maintenance Service. This question is for Mr. Boston. You have a new company established, and you try to get the compliance for the business. You will have Mark Henry trading as Henry Contracting Maintenance Service. So could you highlight that for me? How would you go about getting that? Because I'm trying that for the past 3 months and I ain't getting nowhere with it.
Like I said, everything is about a process. And apparently you missed me with the trade name. If you are Mark Henry and you have a business with another name, the authentication of that existence is a registration from the deeds registry. When you bring that to us, that could authenticate that, we would then do what you're asking by upgrading our system to show that Mark Henry is also associated with and is therefore Mark Henry trading as. Thank you.
My name is Merle Dover, representing New Era Cleaning and Construction Services. While I recognize that Mr. Boston is saying that within 3 days, it is possible for you to get a national insurance compliance. Oftentimes, persons have had experience where it takes up to 9-10 days. And sometimes when you're vying for a contract, you're being given about 5 to 6 days in preparation to get up national insurance compliances and so forth. Mr. Boston, your database would have had a previous compliance report for the persons requisiting a compliance. Isn't it possible that the system can be upgraded that when persons supply their proof that their national insurance contributions are up to date, you just pull that last compliance out of the system, endorse it by the particular authority, and you give it to the person wanting that compliance? It would expedite the system faster.
It's a good suggestion, but you've asked a multiplicity of things that I want to address. One, perhaps you need to clarify for me also what category you're applying for this compliance in. Self-employed versus employer. Which one? Okay. As a matter of fact, the self-employed, you're correct, but I'm a little appalled. That's exactly what we do. We always refer to the last compliance as our first check. The only issue that would lead to a delay, or that should lead to a delay, is if we're perhaps spotting the person not being up to date, and that may call for some engagements, but otherwise to that, you should have it in 3 full working days. As it relates, I said in my presentation, we are moving to the electronic platform. The integrity of the database is being checked. Once we're comfortable with that, once you apply, everything is electronic. The system does the checks. If there's a reason why it has not issued it, that would be printed as a report. Anything else I missed? Thank you, Ms. Dover. Should I stay here?
Good afternoon, all. Honorable Minister, good day, all. My question is directed to the Honorable Minister, Mr. Patterson. I don't know if I quote him correct, but earlier he stated in a statement he wished to make the system more equitable. Who was he referring to, the new contractors, or And prior to that, the statement he said basically for a new contractor, they should be able to finance their own project. Now, I'm a little concerned because as a new contractor, I'm a little concerned to find out exactly how are we going to be more equitable as, and being more equal as in contracts if you're a new contractor, starting out.
Thank you, sir. When I mentioned equitable, I mean I was referring in the realm of equitable in the sense that you should have a fair chance. The system should be so geared to ensure, several persons have mentioned the 20% and those things like that. So let me take the opportunity, which Minister Ferguson reminded me as soon as I sat down, that there are different levels of tendering. The Ministerial Tender Board, which is for my ministry, which is different to private ministry, is $14 million up to, we adjudge tenders from up to $40 million. And when I said equitable is that what we've done in the ministry, we have category A contractors, the big ones, you see them every day in the papers. Category B, the ones that are around but medium size, and then there's the third category, new entrances and such. Arising out of this process here, there's something called a pre-qualification, which I want to reopen again. So if you're pre-qualified, and the pre-qualification, I think somebody would have discussed that early on, or maybe later. Right. When you're pre-qualified, we ask you to submit certain basic information. As long as you are pre-qualified, then we say, so if we have a job small in my ministry, we would only ask the category, the lowest new entrants to tender, so therefore it's equitable because you'll be competing against persons at your own skill level and financial capacity level. So obviously I have seen, and I do know it happens, that the big contractors that do city fences for $400 million, they're also bidding to supply a truckload of, and it's true. So therefore, obviously, and they can undercut you all the while, and the rules would mean if they tender, we would have to go into it. That's what I'm saying by making it more equitable. And the question of financing, you have to be able to have some level of financing. And I tell you why. I give you a true story. Of course, the names and the characters will be changed. There was a young company that came up to tender. I knew it because, of course, the youngster kept coming to the office. Exactly what you all are doing here, I encouraged them to do, it's a team of young men. And they did all the thing, and they won, not a big contract. They won, I think it was $8 million contract. Just for emphasis, the name of the contract was Bombastic Construction, logo, we got a boom. And they signed the contract as Bombastic Contractors, collected their mobilization bond, in all glee. And the check is written in Bombastic Contractors. Their name is Troy Henry. Their bank account is in Troy Henry. So therefore, the engineers are saying to them, well, you have to start, or if not, we bring, obviously you have 2 to 10 days to start and those things like that. They have no money, they had no sort of equity, they were going to use the mobilization advance to fund it. But the bank would not take a check, so you have this check of $2 million, which looks good, but the bank would not deposit a check in Troy Henry's account written on Bombastic Construction. Right, so these are the real problems. So if you don't have some sort of, so they obviously, and the contract was not in Georgetown, it was in another region. So so those are the real problems. So therefore, you obviously have to have some sort of startup to ensure that you at least can get to the job site before you actually start working. So that's what I'm saying about you have to have some level of finance. And it's a lesson to you if you're going to, the gentleman there said trading as, that may be good, but the contract is signed in the name of the person the company that won the tender, not the individuals. And the minister can't, and coming to me in that case, if you're coming to me asking the minister to intervene, I can't intervene in something like that. That is the banking laws and finance. So that's what I'm speaking about when you have to have some sort of level of financing. Thank you.
My name is Kelvin McKenzie. I'm from Linden. I've got a question, an issue, and a question for Mr. Boston. I've been out of employment for the longest while. And past government had an REO there. And I went to them, I said, you're giving people, your own people, work, and I need some work. So, you know, and I wasn't too nice with her, so she sent me to get some compliance. So I went to GRA, I got through. Went to NIS, and when it's time for me to pay, the girl told me, one of the officers said to me, you've got to pay $15,000 a month, and you got to pay 3 months in advance. So I went to one of my colleagues, and I asked him, he's a contractor, he's right here. I said, how much you pay? Because he getting a lot of contracts. I said, how much you pay? He says, it's about $6,000, and at that time he paid $6,000, and so now it's about $7,000. I said, how this girl telling me 15? So I wonder, I say, you know something? I go to this present administration, there's Mr. Morion, and he was like, go. I tell you now, go. I went, but subsequently, what happened, I couldn't get through at that time. Now, today I asked one of your staff, how much do you pay? She says about 7, 8. Now I'm asking you, how much, as in, yeah. How much must I pay to be self-employed and to get a compliance from NIS?
You know, I am very, very happy about this presentation because the forum is now working 2 ways. There are some things I will definitely have to look at also. And we'll talk after. Because what you have to pay is not by arbitration. In addition to that, I want to alert you that you should not use a benchmark of what somebody else is paying. Because even with GRA, and I'm sure they'll concur, and I can't understand, that's why I can't understand somebody telling you have to pay. What has to be done is an assessment. And based upon what you give, it will determine where we put you. So, like I said, don't look across at the other person. Based upon your assessment as a self-employed person will determine what you have to pay. But I'm happy about the highlight too, and I will really like to get that information because you see, sometimes you think everything is glory and nice, but even internally, if what you're saying is substantial, well then even in that case, NIS is at fault if they did arbitrate for you, and I'd like to publicly apologize to you for that.
Thank you very much, and I would like to thank Mr. Patterson for giving me the opportunity to go and get little employment now.
My name is Jared Kisoon, and I'm representing the Anson McCall Group. I'm going to give Mr. Boston a break. My question's actually directed to the honorable ministers within the Ministry of Public Infrastructure. The substance of this seminar this morning has been largely procedural. My questions or comments are more policy-based. The first has to do with the licensing of contractors. I mean, the minister spoke about putting a donkey in a horse race. Guyana has become famous, infamous for fly-by-night contractors. Somebody who will go to Trinidad for 2 months and lay brick and then come back to Guyana and claim he's a contractor and claim he knows how to build a house. My question is, and I know I'd heard some rhetoric about it from the previous sitting administration about introducing or reintroducing the licensing of contractors. Wouldn't that solve the problem of contractors having to go to 3 different entities to get compliances? Instead of having to go to GRA, to NIS, to everybody else, we can have one governing license that can cover a contractor in order for them to get contracts. Not to cut you, Minister. In addition to that, it can also act as a deterrent to contractors from doing shabby work. If you do shabby work, you are stripped of your license and therefore not allowed to do any sorts of contracts, whether it be government or residential or commercial. My second question or comment has to do, and I think you knew this was coming, Minister, has to do with the supply of building materials for government contracts, it was with great dismay that I continue to see substandard materials being used in government contracts. And this was something, before the new administration came on board, they had promised that would come to an end. And, we're still seeing a lot of government contracts being done using substandard materials. I was just wondering when the enforcement of that is going to come into play to stop that from happening. Taxpayers do deserve more. That's it from me.
Yes, Mr. Ferguson said I should take them. There you go. That's that. Right. On the very first one on constructors' registration, that's an extremely valid point. We have none. There is nothing in place, not even for contractors, not for engineers. I think other than the medical profession, the accountants and the lawyers, there's no regulatory oversight over all of that. And it's been something mooted for years. I'm looking now at the engineers to start there and the architects and the professionals. But I do think that it's a valid thing. However, this area has to be a decision taken and unanimously supported, because just as though you can say it or you regulate it, it can be used as a method of exclusion, right? For contractors, I mean. So we will, but this is something to be looked at. And I do take your point that anybody, in a previous incarnation before I was here, I used to lament that exact same fact that, you just had to walk past, like the song Lion the Liar. The man just had to walk around the corner, and he could sew the suits for the tailor. Just the same thing for the suits for the man. Same thing with contractors. You just have to walk around the corner, pick up a ruler and say, "Oh, you're a contractor," and there's little recourse to that. I do know that as I mentioned in my opening remarks, well, at least in my ministry, there are penalties for not complying. So a fly-by-night, a donkey may run in the race, but that'll be the last race you run in. Right, so that is one. And the second question on inferior materials. I probably would like to hear much more about that, because obviously we, as my ministry, I can only speak for me and I can't speak for other ministries. We do have a materials testing lab that are supposed to test the quality of the materials incorporated before and during construction. We do primarily civil work. So the asphalt will be tested, the subgrades, the crusher run, and those things like that. But I would be interested to hear the distinction between inferior materials or bad workmanship, because most times, in my ministry, it's bad workmanship as opposed to the materials. But you do have a point, and we will look into that.
The name is Joe Hamilton. Could you say the timeline for registration certificate from the NIS? Because I give you a story. I am doing some consultancy for overseas company coming to Guyana. Your officer took 1.5 months before they came to examine the office. And as I'm sitting here today, 1.5 weeks after, we're yet to receive this registration, whilst at the level of GRA, we have in the said week received the TIN registration. The second issue is the officer from GRA indicated that they are now issuing compliance certificates for half a year. The question is, and I say this, it is an inefficient process for any company every month to have to go to the NIS. Inefficient. And we cannot seriously talk about development and serious work. We used to hear from the GRA, and I'm glad, I'm thankful, and I compliment the GRA. We used to hear from the GRA that this 3 months, this quarter is written in stone. So that stone, we have broken the stone in the mode of efficiency. And now only 2 times a year you can go. You will have to go to a GRA. I'm seeking to plead with you and seek to ask you to plead with your board to change the inefficient methodology where every month a company cannot do their work. And you will not be able to do your work. Where every month, and now the Minister of Public Infrastructure is seeking to encourage more companies to come in. Think about it. The inefficiency that we have now, and now more companies coming in, I submit, sir, we have to change, NIS must change. At least quarterly, give us a compliance and not monthly.
The one good thing about these forums is that you usually, if you want to survive, have to come prepared, and I think I have. Mr. Hamilton, I will take outside the information as it relates to that registration, because that is an embarrassment if that is so. We have taken, I don't know if it was in the past, but I know as of February, we had some very intensive meetings, which has led to registrations now being completed in a process of 3 days? 2 to 3 days. 2 to 3 days? Was it recent? Well, okay, we'll speak. As it relates to the compliance, I don't want to get in a debate, but I don't think 1 month is an efficient system, but perhaps a burdensome system. I'll take that. It's burdensome. But let me explain some comparisons between GRA and NIS. GRA is a pure collection agency. They collect taxes. NIS has to do a balance of collecting contributions, which must then in turn be used to run the entire operations of NIS, which includes paying out benefits, particularly old age benefits, every month. Perhaps in history, the culture of 1 month compliance is hinged on the culture of our society. Look at our billing process. People only rush to the billing booth when there is time to pay. Now, if we are to give you a 3-month compliance, and we got to pay pensioners monthly, well, NIS got another problem, because we know people would not pay on time. But that's not the issue. I'm just using that to analyze the month-to-month. The month-to-month issue would have always been to match up income collection with the need of what has to be paid per month. But fortunately, even prior to GRA's move to 6 months, NIS has started to consider a revision of its compliance period. Admittedly, we have recognized that it becomes very tedious for persons to indeed visit month to month. And I have the impression that perhaps one day you might have peeped into my office, because it's not easy some days to sign 300 compliances with other mandates. So we are looking at it, but it's a bit slower than GRA because, like I said, GRA, while being a collection agency, NIS, in that modality of expanding the time, also needs to critically analyze and be sure they're putting in place the proper mechanism that would still enable us to match income with the required expenditure of periods. So we are looking at the mobile, as a matter of fact, as late as yesterday afternoon. One of the issues discussed at one of our meetings was the very issue. We are going to try and work on it as fast as possible, but understand that it will come. I can't see it not coming. It will have to happen. You're correct. But it will come with some conditions. That much I'll say at this forum. Thank you.
In the month of February 2016, this year, I had registered a company by the name of Carroll's and Sons Brother Construction and General Cleaning Company. And I was told that I have to, pay NIS and seek GRA compliances. I went to GRA and I received the compliances. When I went to NIS, they told me that I have to pay a sum of $7,000. I started to pay, but I only worked within a month as a self-employed person, not a contract, even though that I have a registered company. I would like to know if I still have to continue paying the $7,000 every month, or there is some place in measure that will, when I get work, I'll pay, or what do you, thank you.
Like I said in the presentation, some responsibilities are yours. There's a criteria which says that if there's a period of inactivity, which means you're not working, within 1 month, you should have informed NIS officially. Once you do that, that hurdle will be cleared.
Now, what I would like to know, say we say roads, you're doing roads. And I would like to know, within the past and present, the contractors, what we have, if any of these contractors are doing standard works with standard and quality, as well as the people who are supervising them, the consultant, and doing proper investigation. Example, roads. The other day, Ruby Road complete, but they had a lot of problems due to poor site investigation at Ruby Road. Part of that road collapsed even before the road complete. So when this gentleman was saying about contractors being qualified, the requirements of having contractors, whether big contractors, small contractors, all of them doing substandard works. And those works, substandard works, is make a nation poor forever, life. Right? So I would like to know even the quality of materials, like let me say, you're using 12 mm or 12 point something mm, you're able to convert it and say you're using half-inch steel. But the people who sell in the suppliers, they would buy 11 mm. And when you go in the site, most of these contractors don't even have a good thing like a caliper that you could verify what size of steel you get in. Stone. You're supposed to do in a mixed design and concrete. You're supposed to do a sieve analysis on the coarse aggregate so you could know what fines you get in. The more fines you get in a stone, that means you use more water and you have to use more cement. They have been doing no mixed design for years now. Nobody in doing mixed design. It's trial and error, backwardness, thumb rule. So where quality is concerned, even right now, university doing a project, I'm on that project. Poor site investigation. You're doing drainage and irrigation, you're doing the perimeter drains at UG. You're excavating them, but these outside drains are pulling the water to this, the pump at Lillian Dahl. Those drains are not clean. So when you investigate it around, excavate the drains in UG, the water will pull right back into there. So what with the consultants? And there's University again, and they're doing concrete work there. No proper sieve analysis, the mixed design, everything poor. The same Ruby Road is in this time. Yeah, they passed in the previous government, I think year before the last. Bad work. All the contractors, too, before you say something, Minister, all the contractors, past and present, producing poor works. And that would make this country poor forever. Not the money who Mr. Sharma and them investigating, whether corruption. The works, these infrastructure works, poor. Poor. The technicians they have now, poor. The contractors, poor. And the country, poor. Let me talk about these bridges, what they're doing. I've been here from a long, long time I've been here. All these structures for the rivers and sea defenses like sluices. Poor design, bad business. The consultant to blame and the contractor. They got a lot of people inside there, no eye. like Mr. Narain. You got Mr. Brian.
Thank you, sir.
And many others.
If we can just have, I think the minister
Right.
would like to respond to your point.
No, the minister ain't gonna respond. The people gonna know. The minister can't respond. Here when the minister tell me just now, he's going for a coffee break. Minister, you should use little lemon oil in the morning with honey. And that would carry you right through the day. And eat like good fruits. Not poor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll take you up on the lemon. I'll take you up on the lemon shortly. Thank you very much. The gentleman is very passionate about the construction. You can see that, and I applaud him. All right. Yes, he raised a few valid points about consultants. That has been an issue of concern. That has been an issue concern to us. The question that there are penalties in the contractor's contract, whereby should they should they do substandard works, we can penalize them. We can take their bonds, etc. But there's no such penalties in consultants projects. And there's oftentimes contractors diligently follow the designs by consultants, and that proves defective, and the contractor, as the public would say, would bear the blunt of the delays and the costs. We are addressing that. That is a question I know that it has come up with MPI, but I know the finance secretary is not here. It has come up with my ministry, the responsibility of consultants. So this, rest assured that we are looking at that. And on the question of materials and workmanship, it's a work in progress. I do thank the gentleman for his commitment. Right? As always, I do thank you, folks. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to bring to end.
I have a very important issue to deal with in connection with contractors and how we treat contractors and how contractors treat their employees in the matter of safety. I'm an electrician by profession, and I'm representing Hamilton's Electrical. And a lot of times in the electrical fraternity, we have a list of rules, either from the IE regulation or the new code that is being implemented, which is the NEC, National Electrical Code. The problem is that there's various requirements, safety requirements, and I dare say none of them in the electrical fraternity is being followed. As a contractor, we're instructed to use safety boots, safety helmets, fiberglass ladders, and various entities. But only the big companies really, some of them follow through. Now, in many homes, persons build homes. We're in housing industry boom. And in many homes, construction and electrical, you see people coming to work with slippers. Now, I've engaged a few contractor friends of mine, and this is serious. Every one of them in the last months have lost. It hasn't made the major news, but has lost an employee via they fall from a scaffold that was a makeshift scaffold. But I don't know why we're still using wood scaffolds and allowed to do so. One company, I don't want to mention the company, but one company, this guy was on a metal scaffold doing electrical work, and it was a shady scaffold. He fell and broke his arm, his leg, and many other instances. A house just behind me is being built, and the guy is doing this guttering, nice fancy guttering. The guy is up on the roof without any harness. He's barefoot, he has a drill, and he's about 30 feet up in the air. Now, if he falls and slips, who's going to compensate him? You know, this is a major problem in other developing countries. There are inspectors that go about at these different sites, and if you don't have the proper inspection, proper certificate, proper safety equipment, you can be fined. In Brazil, that is, I've worked there, that's a requirement. United States, I've spent some time working there, it's even worse there. Why is it that we're allowing persons or vulnerable workers or resources to fall through cracks, to die, to injure themselves, and it paralyzes the entire family because this person is working hard to provide for his family? Why are we not instituting rules and regulations so that contractors mandate their workers to wear safety equipment?
Thank you very much, my brother. You're absolutely correct. Absolutely correct in the sense that we have to do more as a country on our health and safety regulations. I know that it's something that amazes me up to now, seeing persons on scaffoldings. It's even worse that you see persons operating heavy-duty equipment in slippers. That is correct. We have to do much more. I know that the regulations are in place. They are to be enforced by the Ministry of Social Protection with the Labor Division. I know that they have started carrying contractors to court. I know that for sure for safety breaches, but it's something I should raise with them. I'll raise with the minister about us being more vigilant, visiting and implementing our fines. I mean, I know they've started carrying contractors that would have had employees, workers injured or would have unfortunately died on the job. You have 3 days, I think, or 2 days, 2 or 3 days to report it, and there's several other requirements by law you're supposed to do. I know they've been carrying contractors to court, but we have to do much more, and I agree with you that we can't be on a 30-foot roof with slippers, but it's something that we'd have to look into. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And just in addition to what the minister is saying, at the Ministry of Public Infrastructure, we do try to enforce and we do impose on contractors to inform them that it is required, it is in their contract, that they need to supply their workers with safety gears, and these workers need to wear the safety gears. So, and a lot of times you would get, because I work particularly in this area, so a lot of times you would get contractors saying, the workers don't want to wear the safety gears, then what do? Then you as the contractor, you need to ensure, because if there's an issue, you will be the one that's going to be taken to court. You're the one that's going to be fined. So you have to find ways and means of ensuring that your workers comply with whatever safety, environmental, and social regulations that are in place. With that said, it brings us to the end of our morning session. I encourage you to remain for this afternoon session, because in this afternoon we're going to have especially the bid simulation, which is going to go through step by step of how you submit your bids and what exactly it is required, because this is an area, especially in the ministry, that a lot of contractors fall short. And as was mentioned in earlier presentations, it's not the lowest bid that wins, it's the lowest responsive bidder. So you have to first qualify. So thank you. Lunch is provided for you downstairs, and hope to see you all back this afternoon.